There's a confidential hotline New Jersey police officers can call when the stress of the job becomes too much, and their families can get help too. Cop2Cop is a 24/7 peer support hotline at 1-866-COP2COP. If you know a police officer who is struggling, please share this vital information with them right now. Hello, I'm Sandra Levine, host of Still Time for Joy. My guest today is David Weiss, a retired correctional police captain who found his calling working for Cop2Cop as a peer support specialist, helping fellow police officers and their families get through pain and trauma, even saving lives. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So give me a quick overview, please. How does Cop2Cop work?
So Cop2Cop is a reciprocal peer support line for police officers, correctional police officers, and their families in the state of New Jersey. We also see people that aren't in the state of New Jersey as well sometimes, but it's for any issues that they might have from marital discord all the way up to, departmental issues. But, we're there for the officers whenever they need anything, 24 hours a day. They could email us. They could also, we also have a chat function.
And officers see a lot of awful situations on the job, so you're there to support them when they've also gone through trauma. Traditionally, there's been sort of a tough it out mentality among police officers. Does that still persist today? Do officers still have trouble reaching out for help?
They do. When I had first started in 1988, it was a different kind of mentality where most people were like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps or put your big boy pants on. And over the years, it's changed a little bit as time has passed. Chiefs and wardens have been more receptive to getting their men help. But, one of the biggest issues that we always face is this tough guy mentality, because most law enforcement officers are either protectors, or they go and their role, or at least the role that they see, is that they're the person that helps people and they're not the people that ask for help. And sometimes just going, the internal struggle that they have, that they don't always use their service.
So what kind of stories do you hear from callers? What kind of things are they struggling with?
It's a whole big gamut of things. Obviously there's work-related issues. Like if you read the news today recently, like there's police shootings like in the area and things along those lines. We've gotten calls, from corrections guys that have witnessed hangings or stabbings. Some of the more common things are like motor vehicle stuff. And when you arrive on a scene to a motor vehicle fatality, and if you, a lot of times the officers, unlike myself, that they're young and they have young children, and some of these accidents involve children. Not only was there a 3-year-old a child that you had to work on prior to the EMTs getting there, you have a 3-year-old child at home, and it just reminds you of that, and anything. Domestic violence, walking in sometimes feeling a little helpless, like when that's already transpired, and you wish you had been there quicker, or things along those lines. And who knows when the shoelace is going to break, right? So it might not be your first person that you saw hanging, or it might be your third motor vehicle of fatality, but they all add up, and then at one point you're just like, wow. And then you get a little confused, I guess, at a point where you're not sure why this thing bothers you so much more than it did, because you had done it so many times, but it just keeps adding up.
Yeah, so there can be a cumulative effect of the trauma.
But it's also sometimes marital discord or issues with their boss. So we're pretty much there to you could call me and say, hey, listen, I'm on midnights and I really hate midnights. Now, where that might be, where some person might not think that that's really an issue, I can look back, being that it's reciprocal peer support, and knowing that I didn't enjoy midnights very much either, so it's a big gamut of different issues that they might call for.
And that's one of the core reasons your program is successful. It is Cop2Cop. So when people call in, they're going to reach somebody who understands what they're going through. Talk to me about how important it is for a police officer calling in for help to have someone on the other end of the line who gets it.
First of all, it cuts out a lot, the whole, like, almost like the middleman. So, like, you never have to sit there and explain to me, what's going on. Like, this is why this bothers me, or this is what we do, and this is my schedule, or this is that, or, because I know all of that. And then I basically have a general idea, like, what the problems are or what the problems were for me. And when you bring it up, then we definitely can talk through it. Reciprocal peer support is one cop talking to another cop, almost as similar as, like Alcoholics Anonymous, where one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. It's, we just we cut out all that logistical stuff. We know exactly what we're talking about, and I know what you're talking about, and that actually encourages you to open up a little more, where you could tell me things where you might not feel comfortable telling. For instance, you might have done something that either you're not proud of or you wouldn't want to get back to anybody, and that's but when you talk to me and I can talk about my experience, that might have happened to me as well. All the guys that work at Cop2Cop and gals are retired, so we're under no obligation to act. Like, even if it was drug use, like, I'm not going to report you, I'm not going to call your department. And then because I work for Rutgers, excuse me, I have HIPAA obligations as well.
How about family members? What kind of calls do you get from family members seeking help?
It's usually, I mean, in my experience, two different kind of calls. One, they're trying to get their husband to call. So, and that's, and that sometimes takes time. And then and the other one is like marital discord. Like, I'm leaving, I'm getting a divorce from my correctional police officer husband, and I don't know what to do. And, I mean, there's like nuances, like, I don't really want to blow up his job, but I can't live here either. Please help.
And when a police officer calls in and they need more than just talking to you for a few minutes, you can refer them out to professionals who are specifically trained to work with police officers. How does that work?
Well, since we've been around so long, 25 years plus, have a vetted system. We have therapists and doctors that we vetted. We go to their facilities and we see what they have to offer. Because police officers need to also be comfortable going to these places. And again, when you talk to a peer and you can cut through the weeds because I know what you're talking about, we try to get the same thing with our therapists as well that specialize in talking to these guys. So they're not going to be like, nothing's going to loop them. When the person walks in, they're going to know exactly what they need. They're going to, whatever it is, because there's things that, sometimes it could be pension issues, it could be, medical benefit issues, things that would pertain to the police officer directly, and having to go to somebody who didn't know what they were doing would be counterproductive.
And you mentioned that Cop2Cop is part of Rutgers. It is part of the Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care National Call Center, which houses numerous hotlines, including for firefighters and nurses, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to police officers, one would think that all police departments would have some kind of program in place to help officers with the stress and the trauma that come along with the job. Why don't they all have some help for the officers, and do you think they should?
Well, most police departments have EAP, like an Employees Assistance Program, but a lot of times the officers involved like to keep some sort of degree of anonymity, and because of that, because you never know, you want to make sure that if you're going through something that actually could jeopardize your career, or you're not sure what's going on, that you want to talk to somebody that that it's not going to get back to your department, right? So one of the the things I was saying before is, like, I'm under no obligation to act. Even the person designated from your department is, if you're a police officer and the person that you're supposed to go to first is designated from your department, they can say whatever they like, but they have an obligation to act. So if depending on what had transpired, they're going to report it to the department, because that's, when I was working, I would do the same. But because they can come to us, and whatever they say to me is confidential and it stays there. Most people that call Cop2Cop have skipped the EAP altogether.
Now, Cop2Cop just celebrated its 25th anniversary last year in 2025, and you've been working for Cop2Cop for about 11 years now. So is there a typical day? What is a typical day like?
No, there's really not a typical day. Anything could happen, so I can sit there and like most police work is very similar. Nothing happens until something happens, right? And that's always how it is. So I mean, I'm sitting there. I have uh, clients that I talk to, and I check on them and I make sure they're going on. But I'm on the phone, waiting for new calls to come in for either police officers or correctional officers going through something traumatic that they need to talk about, but or also if somebody's requesting a critical incident stress management debriefing.
And that's exactly what I want to talk about now is that debriefing that you offer. It can be for an entire department when something stressful has happened. What are these debriefings for and how do they work?
A lot of times when critical incidents occur, like say, like we were talking about before, like a motor vehicle fatality, there's a whole slew of people that are involved. So it's not like we have one person. You might have the whole shift that responded. So you might have 6 officers. You might have 2 or 3 dispatchers that were involved, and sometimes you might even have emergency medical people that have arrived to the scene, and we sometimes open that up. It depends on the department. Normally we don't, but we have in the past, and it's basically a way of checking the pulse of these guys and seeing how they're doing, and it's also trying to bring down the pressure. So when we get them to talk a little bit, we'll ask them, basically who's there. What would their what their position is, and what we do is if we try to weed out anybody that's not in there. So if we're doing a debriefing and say you're a captain and you weren't on duty that day and you really weren't involved in the situation, we'll say, hey Cap, we appreciate that you're here for your guys, but right now we would like to talk to the officers involved, and the reason is that because we want them to talk candidly. And then there's a doctor Everly does a critical incident debriefing course, and we follow his format. And basically, it's again to alleviate their symptoms, and we're just going to ask them, who they are, and then we go, what happened, and what they did when they got there, and they get to talk about it. What was the worst thing you got to see, and they get to continue to talk about it. And then we discuss that things that might happen in the future, like this is you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal event, right? That's a huge thing to tell the guy that yeah, this is kind of crazy and you're not feeling so great, but that's normal because
Sure.
that's what's supposed to happen to a normal person. You've witnessed an event that's abnormal, and that's and then when they get to see that, and then we try to tell them, like, listen, some of this stuff should dissipate, right? So after a few days, you should starting feeling a little better. And if not, you should reach out either to us or to a higher level of care, right? And then we try to give them some helpful hints. Try to avoid alcohol, sleeping medication if you can, and that not everything is for everybody. So if you're at the gym, and you're a local officer and the guys know the incident was local, and you don't have to discuss that with everybody. I choose, and you just talk to the people that were involved, and you guys are a team, and you'll get better. And then we also offer them the resources of the Cop2Cop program. Like, listen, if you need to continue to talk, and one of the things about the Cop2Cop program is one of the officers that work there, retired officer from Newark, is a licensed social worker. So we have a clinician who's also a police officer. So, depending on the incident, he might be there as well, but it's also, it branches that until we can get you an appointment somewhere. So if you need a higher level of care than myself, Joe is also there as well.
Yeah, have you heard from police officers how this has helped them? Do you get stories back ever about it making a difference?
We do all the time. Every time we go to places. Sometimes guys are right, but again, police officers aren't the biggest writers when it comes to like writing my boss and saying Dave did such a great job or Joe just did such a great job and so on and so forth. But that's happened a few times too. I also don't ask for that. When we present at other places and I get to sit down, we'll sometimes put out flyers to promote the program, and guys will come up to us and say, you guys really helped me. I was going through a rough time and I don't know. And I don't know the exact stats, but Joe Orgo, he's the clinician police officer. He keeps like we have a list of averted suicides, so like that we know, like we've and I'm not sure what the number is for this year, but I know last year was double digits.
Wow. Wow. So, Dave, you were a correctional police captain for many years, and you're also a veteran, having been stationed on the border of North and South Korea. So, how did those experiences together lead to some very dark times for you personally?
When I was 17 years old, when I graduated high school, I went to the military. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I don't really think of one specific incident that really happened in the military. That like kind of like this was the day that this happened. But I knew when I went in, I was a young man or a kid basically, and when I left there, I was already uh, I had a fairly decent relationship with alcohol. So when I left out of there, almost instantaneous, I went to the county corrections in Middlesex, and between fights and fires and hangings and all that stuff, like all that stuff just kind of keeps adding up, and it just keeps adding up, and bad shifts and the things we talked about before, like you don't know what's the shoelace, like watching this person kill themselves, or performing CPR on that person until somebody comes, or a ton of overtime, not being home with your family, add in a divorce, and then you're just ripe. I flourished in this department. I rose up in the ranks. But the truth was, I had two different careers. I had, for the first 10, 12 years, I was the guy that, if they could probably fire me, they would. I abused my sick time. I drank. And work always lost out. And then, I just got very lucky, to get sober.
You faced a lot of trauma. You had a terrible alcohol problem, but then you became sober, and now you're a peer recovery specialist. And so you help officers who are going through struggles with alcoholism. What does that mean to you?
When I first got sober, a lieutenant from Cop2Cop came in. Her name was Shalea Hobson. When she presented for Cop2Cop, I realized that there was a place to go where I could pay it back, right? Because I always felt like I was a nuisance to the people I worked with, the people the surrounding people around me. Like I wasn't the best representation of my department, of the people that do what I do in general. So here was a way for me to pay it forward. I'm sober, and a lot of guys that call up aren't, and they don't know where they can go, and they don't know what they can do, and there's like a whole slew of problems. But if you're not like really sure, and you're on the fence, and you call somebody, and you have that moment where you're really willing to do whatever they need you to do, and but you're also looking for any excuse not to do it, right? And I get to weed through some of the when one alcoholic talks to another alcoholic, the excuse you tell your wife or your sister or your daughter, I'm cool with that. I get it. I've done that. But when you're telling me something that's not true, I'm going to be able to tell you, say, yeah, dude, that's not true. And here's why. Because when I said it like this, and didn't work either, And then again, I get to lead by example. I get to say, I'm sober 21 years, in 20 and 21 on St. Patrick's Day. So I'll be sober 21 years. And I did half my career sober. And all these things that you think are an obstacle are not. And here's why. And so I really, I'm glad that Cop2Cop gave me the opportunity to be certified in that as well.
You told me when we had spoken earlier on the phone that there are a lot of problems with alcohol with police officers and other first responders. Have you found that working for Cop2Cop to be
Yeah,
true?
absolutely. It just seems to be like the perfect breeding ground. Like you know, throw in shift work. So like you're working a crazy shift, and it's a Tuesday, and that's your day off. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And so all these things lead into it. Plus, the critical incidents, and if you're going to self-medicate, like there's the way to go, like, right, that's the easiest. So maybe not cheaper, but easiest. So the way to go is you go get a bottle and you can self-medicate. The problem is it catches up with you so quickly. And then the next thing you know, that's all you do. And then you can't, then you're just in that cycle. You don't know what to do.
So, what is the feeling that you get, Dave, when you help a fellow police officer either with an alcohol problem or getting through what they've witnessed on the job, helping them with their trauma? How do you feel about being able to be in this position?
You know, one of the cool things about the title of reciprocal peer support is the reciprocal part. You know, and a lot of times people might downplay that, like they're always like, you know, it's so awesome, you know, that you're helping all these other people, but they help me, right? And that's the beauty of it. It's almost like they always say in AA, you know, you know, you help me more than I help you, and a lot of times that's really true, you know, because I get to get out of myself, and then I get to think about you a little bit more than I think about myself. You know, who could ask for anything better? And based on what I've been through and the things that I've done and the mistakes that I made, I think I'm obligated to do so, right? So I have an obligation. So not only do I feel great about it, I feel obligated to do it. And that I feel that if you know, that I failed, if there's any cops out there that don't know that they can get sober, or that there's a Cop2Cop program to call for any reason, you know, then I think I failed. Like, it's my job is to let people know that there's a solution to their problems, and it might start here, and that's what I feel called to do.
So you feel this is a calling for you. Have you found purpose in the work you're doing?
Absolutely. I'm truly blessed. People go through their whole lives and don't know what their true calling is. You know, they take their first job, they do this, they do that, and that they're not 100% sure. But I have a call, like I'm retired and I still have a calling. I'm a sober member of the world looking to help other people, and I'm absolutely called to that.
Well, congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing, Dave. And I want to repeat the hotline number right now. It is 1-866-COP2COP, which is 866-267-2267. You also can log on to njcop2cop.com, because you officers and their families can get help via email or chat, as well as calling the hotline. And one other thing I want to mention before we sign off is you do mostly help people from New Jersey, but if someone calls from out of state, are you also able to help them? And what is the national hotline people should call if they're having problems?
So anybody that calls Cop2Cop, you know, police officer, correctional officer, their families, we offer them assistance. It doesn't matter where they call from. We'll never turn down anybody from any other state. And then also, you know, the biggest thing in the net is 988, right? So like if you're really going through something, you know, especially if you have, it pertains to suicide at all, suicidal thoughts or ideations or any of those things, we'll get you to 988. And the cool thing with that is, I'll warm transfer you as well. So I'm not just going to say to you, hey, call 988 and good luck. I'm going to say, hold on, let's get 988 on the phone and we'll talk to them together. And then I'll introduce myself, tell them where I'm calling from, say, hey, listen, I got Mike on the phone, or whatever the person's name is, and I really think he'd benefit from speaking with you guys.
So that National Mental Health Hotline is 988. Well, Dave Weiss, you are doing such a great job at Cop2Cop, helping fellow police officers and their families. Thank you for the life-saving work you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me and letting me talk about my program.
If you found today's show helpful, please share the information with someone who needs it, and follow Still Time for Joy for more practical tips on weathering life's storms, as well as inspiring stories of people who have turned their pain into purpose. Please consider supporting the work that goes into producing the show on Patreon. Follow Sandra Levine Productions on Facebook and YouTube, and learn more at sandralevine.com.